before or heard him speak, but God has blessed him with a knowledge of creation.
Amen.
He knows a lot about creation that God has called him. He goes all over the United States teaching creation to youth in a world that is being bombarded with evolution and Satan trying to push that into our children's minds. He's provided Matt, and Matt gives them sound guidance in the Bible that God is the creator of this earth. So with that, turn it over to you, sir.
If it's all right, I'm going to step down. It helps my remote work a little bit better if I'm closer to it. One of the things I wanted to talk about was fine-tuning creation. It's a talk I listened to a while back and did some more studying on it. And that's about how God takes the things in nature and fine-tunes them. And all kind of stuff. It's just right for what it needs to be. Let's see. No? No? Okay, we go. The mass of the earth is just about right. We don't want our gravity much more than what it is, especially the more we add to it. We need to kind of go away. The tilt of the Earth's axis is just right for the seasons that we have. You know, if it moved too much, you would have extremes. Move too much the other way, you would have extremes the other direction. So God's got it just where he wants it. The composition of our atmosphere is just right. You know, God built that for us. Now, whenever you do study, and we believe that the atmosphere may have been a little different before the flood. We probably had a little more pressure, a little bit more oxygen, maybe even a little bit more CO2. And you think that doesn't sound like much, but right now your blood absorbs your hemoglobin absorbs 2 oxygen atoms. It boosts the pressure by about 2 to 2.5 times. It'll absorb 4 to 6. So your blood would be hyperoxygenated. Most of your cuts would heal overnight. They say you may have been able to run all day long and never got tired. And a lot of other things. And they said even with the higher pressure, your body would have more buoyancy in the atmosphere. It would be like you were floating in the airborne. Your joints may not even have hurt as much. We don't know. I want to see how God done it to begin with, although it's probably going to be better than he originally done it when he comes back to do it again. Our magnetic field. Our magnetic field decreases by 1/2 every 14 to 1,500 years, so it's getting really weak right now. It's not holding the stuff up in the atmosphere, so we're getting a lot more cosmic radiation coming through. We're getting more skin cancer and stuff like that. So when God winds it back up, it's going to be back what it was to begin with. Our average temperature is pretty good. I know our temperatures are getting down pretty good. I don't even want to think about what they're getting up north right now. But, I think that we do all right. We can survive. So we got some different fundamentals. You see a quote Einstein made. There's just all kind of different quotes through here. I hate to read all of them, or Amy's done told me I don't need to go over too long because of potluck. So we'll try not to. But nobody's told me what time I need to quit by. So. But just some of the fundamental forces, and we'll look at some more stuff here. But you have the strong nuclear forces, electromagnetic forces, weak nuclear forces, gravitational forces. They all must be very close to what they are right now to work. Some of that stuff goes over my head unless I sit there and study it. But you can look at stuff like the strong nuclear force. If it was 1/200th off of what it is right now, it would be a big problem. You can see over here it talks about the gravitational process. Well, the strong nuclear force, if it was off, if it was 2 less, you would have no hydrogen in fusion. So our sun wouldn't do what it needs to do. If you had too much, you would have only hydrogen. The electromagnetic force, if it was 1/125th off, you have other problems that it would cause. No chemical bonding. The weak nuclear forces, if they were off by 1 in 10,000, it tells over there, let's see, the weak nuclear forces, all hydrogen, the Big Bang couldn't have happened, which don't really think it happened anyway. But you wouldn't have the heavier elements and stuff like that we have now. The chemicals and the way they work together would not work if these forces were off. And you can see that some of them don't have to be off much. And then somebody says, but doesn't the Big Bang model remove the need for God? No. We all probably know who Stephen Hawking is. He's not a real big Christian evangelist, is he? He's really against it. He says, decrease the expansion rate in 1 part in 100,000 million 1 second after the Big Bang would cause the universe to collapse. Well, we don't really believe in the Big Bang like he does, but you see how close all this stuff would have to be balanced for it to work. You can see another quote there. The Creator's aim had to be accurate in 1 part in 10 to the power of 10 to the 123rd. That's numbers we can't even imagine. And I've got a thing kind of showing some of that. But you look at some of the other things about how far they could be off, and things just don't work. Large numbers, examples of fine-tuning. Let's see. The values of the fine-tuning have to be perfect. It says the whole universe seems to be balanced on a knife edge. A very slight change in any of the most fine-tuning factors, and the universe instantly falls apart. One little thing here affects something over here, and nothing works together. And that's what they're learning more and more, is God made this to where it all works. More things you can see that, 10 to the 21st power. Things just don't work. The molecules don't hold together, and different things like that. The atoms don't hold together like they should. And I don't want to bore you with a lot of this stuff. If the strength of gravity was off by 1 in 10 to the 40th, the stars would not work like they should. The gravity has to be right for you to have the fusion and all that, and for the nuclear reaction to work right. So these are numbers, like I say, that are so big, my mind doesn't really fathom them very well. But God makes all the stuff, and he has it in balance. If the earth were slightly more distant or slightly closer from the sun, we wouldn't have a stable water cycle. It'd be impossible, because you get too hot and you get too much vapor, and then you have terrible rainstorms. You get too cold, well, we're an ice planet. So God has it balanced just right. Another quote by Stephen Hawking. The remarkable fact is the values of these numbers seem to have been very finely adjusted. Evolution doesn't adjust things. God adjusts things to make it work. And Richard Dawkins, biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. Now, I imagine it's pretty hard for an evolutionist to admit it looks like it's been designed when they know evolution cannot design anything. So the other was another quote here. We take the side of science in spite of the patent absurdity of some of its constructs, in spite of the unsubstantiated just so stories, because we have a prior commitment to materialism, basically. You know, we've got to keep God out of it. And so a bunch of them have said that. Some of y'all may have heard of the multiverse. They believe there are other universes, and they get more and more and more. Well, why have they done this? Well, the reason that they've done this is they figured out that things couldn't evolve and happen here. So, if you got a million other universes, well, chances are one of them would work out right. You know, so they think if they, they keep putting more time, and then they keep putting more universes and everything else, the chance that something's going to work out right, because the more we're learning, the more we see things won't work out right by chance. It has to have a God there designing us. And that's basically what this is talking about, the different multiverses. So when you hear them talk about the multiverses, they're doing it in a lot of the movies and stuff now, that's where it come up from evolution, because they don't have enough evidence for things to work, so they have to come up with more things to make it look like it works. This is a quote, might have been for the testimonies, I should have put where it was. Creation of matter requires the output of a mind-boggling amount of energy and ingenuity that is, at this time, beyond human capacity to grasp. Everything that followed in the physical world, gravity, electromagnetic radiation, electricity, strong forces, and all of that basically is something that we can't understand, because you got 100 different type of atomic nuclei that everything has to work perfect. And God put it in balance. This is what evolution teaching us. We came from bacteria and slowly went to man. That's our family tree. I like this one a lot better. Luke 3:38, which was the son of Enos, which was the son of Seth, which was the son of Adam, which was the son of God. I like that lineage a lot more than I came from primordial soup, and nobody can explain how all that happened. I know I got a friend that's a creationist, and his dad used to debate people at college campuses and stuff, and he'd tell him, you basically believe you come from a rock. And he was at one of those, and one of the professors come up mad at him. She said, we're not stupid. We don't believe we come from rocks. He said, well, where do you believe you come from? She said, a macromolecule. He said, well, where did that come from? She said, well, it came from a primordial soup to where all the elements got together and created this macromolecule. He said, okay, where'd the elements come together? Well, she said, as it rained and eroded the mountains over the years, and she got to thinking, she turned around and walked away because she figured out they believed that, it rained on the rocks and the elements come and formed in this pool, and we did come from rocks. And another one come up to him and was just kind of mad, said, just kind of, arrogantly said, yeah, and you believe that all the dogs come from just 2 dogs off Noah's Ark. He said, well, you believe they come from a rock. At least we started with dogs. We started with something living. You started with something that's not, and we've not been able to create something living out of something that's not yet. So, like I say, evolutionary theory just believes we come from a mixture of chemicals. And as much as they try to prove, we don't. Now, you used to always hear the claim that we are 98% similar to chimpanzees. So that shows we're related. Well, now that we're learning more, we're down to 85% different. There are 48 million nucleotide differences. If you just change 3 of the nucleotides, it causes death. How does that evolve? Whenever it has to be that precise that you have a little change and you kill it, it can't evolve. God made it just right, just like it needs to be. This is a quote from Charles Darwin. Such a simple instinct as bees making a beehive could be sufficient to overthrow my whole theory. And this was back in his day. We have so many things that overthrow his theory, but it's a religion. They believe in a religion. They can't look at new evidence from a thing that God created. It has to be, it happened by itself. Just looking at DNA and what we're learning right now about that, how does DNA create the cells and the molecules and make them all work together, and then it brings life into existence? We don't know that. I just read a thing within the last couple of days. They figured out DNA has a quality that makes it fireproof. Not completely, but it's fire resistant. So they're starting to study that to figure out how to make other things that are fire resistant for us. It's amazing the amount of things we look at how God makes them, and then we try to turn around and copy them to use for us. Let's see. And I mean, what we've talked about, this is a guy from Cambridge. We don't have a single example in history of science in which information has ever come from anything other than intelligence. There is no property of physics or chemistry that can account for the information we see in DNA. And they are finding out DNA is more and more and more complicated. You used to hear them talk about the junk DNA that was in there because they said, oh, this was just stuff that was left over that's not used. Well, guess what? We're finding out it's used. You know, every time we find out that we have organs that are just not there and aren't needed, well, later on we figure out, yeah, God put them there for a reason. We're just not smart enough to figure it out yet. The human eye, you know, furnished with the automatic aiming, automatic focusing, automatic aperture adjustment, the human eye can function from almost complete darkness to bright sunlight, can see an object the diameter of a hair, and makes about 100,000 separate motions in a single average day, faithfully affording us continuous series of color, stereographic pictures, and all of this is performed without complaint. And then while we're sleeping, it carries on its own maintenance work. And something we read some of the writings of Miss White. She says that Adam and Eve could even actually look down into the molecular level and see the cells of how they work in the plants. I want to see how God originally made us. The eyeball is a wonder. But how did he make us to begin with? Some people have actually said that they believe that Adam and Eve could have even seen the spectrum of sound. There are so many colors that animals and stuff can see that we can't see. I think Adam and Eve probably could see that, but we don't know yet. But it would be interesting. I guarantee you they felt they were missing a lot after sin, because I think there's a lot of things they couldn't do that they could do in the Garden of Eden because of sin. The egg and the sperm and the way the fertilization takes place. The quote down there at the bottom said, in Darwin's day, a human egg was thought to be quite simple. For all practical purpose, it was little more than a microscopic blob of gelatin. Today, we know it's a lot more. I read a paper the other day. You know, we always thought that it was whichever sperm got there first was a lucky one, and that's the one that won. They're finding out now, no. The egg actually picks which one. It picks the one that's best suited. And they're just starting to learn about that. There's so much in this world we don't have a clue. We're just now starting to pick up on. You know, just the stale, the storage, the way it stores food for the cell, the way it stores information and everything else is just amazing. You know, they knew about the non-life does not come, or life does not come from non-life. This was back when with Watson and Crick that did the studies and stuff. They knew this back then. But they still teach that life comes from non-living things. And they knew the law of biogenesis back there. They knew it was a problem. This person here says there's no detailed Darwin account of evolution in any fundamental biochemical or cellular system. Only a variety of wishful speculations. It is remarkable that Darwinism is accepted as a satisfactory explanation of such a vast subject. I mean, these are people that are learned and know, and you steady hear more and more people talking about how evolution couldn't work. But they still believe in it and they still go along with it. This was kind of interesting. Fossil they found, allegedly from a 120 million year old rock. It looks like a duck. It might have even acted like a duck. So was it a duck? No, because evolution said ducks didn't exist with dinosaurs. So it can quack like a duck and look like a duck, but it had to be something else because ducks weren't around with dinosaurs. And you find this all the time. They find footprints, but the rock's too old, so it couldn't be a person's footprints because people were not around back then. It's just something how it's a religion and they keep believing it. I thought this was interesting. This is an actual picture of a cell done with an electron microscope. How can you look and watch how all this thing works and believe it all happened by chance? I can believe some Darwin's day, when they looked at a cell, if they even knew what it was, you know, it was so primitive. We are looking and understanding that these cells are more intricate than our largest cities, with all of the people in them, with all of the utilities and everything else. How does that happen by itself? And how does it keep going? God's there holding it in place. God's there making it work right. And I put a thing on Facebook the other day about how many new cells grow in your body every day and how it regenerates and everything. It's a wonder. You know, we would fall apart if God wasn't there to guide us. Here's a guy who said, I build molecules for a living. I can't even begin to tell you how difficult a job that is. I stand in awe of God because of what he has done through his creation. My faith has been increased through my research. Only a rookie who knows nothing about science would say science takes away from faith. If you really study science, it will bring you closer to God. You know, a piece of a brain tissue the size of a grain of sand contains 100,000 neurons and 1 billion synapses, and they're all talking to each other. And that's, you know, just one grain of sand. We're so wonderfully made. And we're falling apart because of sin. But we're still wonderfully made. We're the most complex and wonderful thing on our earth right now that God made. A Swedish embryologist, you know, he said, I believe that one day the Darwin myth will be ranked the greatest deceit in history of science. When this happens, many people will pose the question, how did this ever happen? You know, and they're still going right along with it. You know, they're talking about the age of the rocks, you know, and they talk about how many millions of years old it is because of the different dating things, the radiometric dating. You can't use carbon dating because carbon dating only lasts, some say 20 to 50,000 years. So you shouldn't be able to carbon date rocks. They carbon date rocks, they come back to 4,000 years. They're carbon dating diamonds. Diamonds should not have carbon in them, not that type of carbon. We are finding carbon-14 in tons of stuff that should not be in there. Because if it's millions of years old, there should be none left. It should turn to another element. We're finding it in everything. And it's because it got put in there at the time of the flood and different things like that. The 4,000 years, that works along. That's within the margin of error for when the flood come along. It's just interesting. And I mean, like they call these polystriate fossils. You have trees and other things, some of them 20, 30, 40, 50 foot, some of them even more, going through a rock layer. Well, that has to get buried sudden. You know, if you figure, 100 to 1,000 years for every inch of that rock that created, that tree wouldn't be there for that long. It would have died and rotted a long time ago. They got buried in the flood. Because of the James Webb Telescope, now the universe is not considered 13.8 billion years old. Now we're at 26.7. Because they've looked out and saw galaxies a lot further than they believe it was. This is a Nobel Prize physicist. He discovered pulsars. He said, I believe in God. It makes no sense to me to assume the universe and our existence is just a cosmic accident. That life emerged due to random physical processes in an environment which simply happened to have the right properties. They said there are more Christian astronomers than any other branch of science because of what they see. They look out into the stars and what they see. So this is kind of how they believe the Big Bang happened. Like I say, we're more now. This is supposedly the furthest galaxy out there that they discovered with the James Webb Telescope. Supposedly it formed only 290 million years after the Big Bang. So they thought that they would be seeing it when it was young. You wouldn't even have star formation and all this stuff. It looks like our galaxy. It's all perfectly formed. It should not be that way if you had a Big Bang and it was young, because the light has been traveling so long, we should be seeing it when it was young. And they thought they were going to see the edge of the universe. They're still seeing stuff. I believe any place we point a telescope to where we think there's nothing out there, and I mean, this has been proven. They've been steady doing it with the Hubble and the James Webb. They're finding more and more stars. I don't know if we're going to see the edge of the universe. There's no telling how big it is, and we can't fathom how big it is. Let's see. This is from the testimonies. I won't read this because we are going. But it just talks about the way energy is interchangeable with matter and stuff. And it's something to me that Miss White was talking about, how energy interchanges with matter back in her time. She understood a lot of this stuff, probably better than most of us. But she probably had a little bit better connection with the Creator than we did. So just to kind of look at some things, the speed of light, and all these different things I talk about, if they were off, I kind of like the scale to the side. Just kind of gives you a little bit of feel of how big things are. You know, going the speed of light from Earth to the moon's 1.3 seconds. From Earth to the sun's about 8 minutes. From Earth to Mars is 12.7. From Earth to Alpha Centauri, which is our next closest sun, is 4.4 light years. And then for our galaxy, it's 52,000 light years. So when we talk about some of this stuff, just think about how far that is. Because we're going to talk about a little bit more stuff in a minute. If you study science deep enough and long enough, it will force you to believe in God. And this is Lord William Kelvin. You've heard of temperatures measured in Kelvin. This was him. So don't let them tell you that all these older scientists that come up with all this stuff were atheists. They were not. I like this. Atheists don't hate fairies, leprechauns, or unicorns because they don't exist. It's impossible to hate something that doesn't exist. Atheists hate God because he does exist. I thought that was interesting. Well, this was another scientist. Our willingness to accept scientific claims that are against common sense is the key to understanding of real struggle between science and the supernatural. If anyone claims not to be surprised by the special features in the universe that the universe has, he's hiding his head in the sand. This is something new they've just found. They have found a supermassive black hole, and it measures 23 million light years in length. Now, how far did we say it would take? How long did it say it would take for us to go across our galaxy? 52,000 light years. So how many of our galaxies can you fit in 23 million? Remember, the God we serve is the one that built this, and this is a tiny little section of it. In our galaxy, we are a grain of sand in our galaxy, and our galaxy is a grain of sand in this. And this is a grain of sand in the universe. At present, the earthlings have but a small glimpse of the glories of the miracles and mysteries of the universe. In the life to come, all treasures of the universe will be open to the study of God's children. Eternity alone can reveal the wonderful works of God, the evidence of his wisdom, and the power in the creating and sustaining of the universe. Look at how long it's going to take for us to learn how God did all this. We may never fully understand it. I look forward to trying. I thought this was a good quote. This was from Kepler. Since we astronomers are the priests of the highest God in regards to the book of nature, it benefits us to be thoughtful, not of the glory of our minds, but rather above all else, the glory of God. So, like I say, you see there's a lot of different quotes here, talking about God. And it's just interesting to look at it. The estimate of the number of galaxies range, but from as low to 100 billion to as high as 100 trillion. And this was in 2016. I can tell you it's went up. Right now they're saying 2 trillion galaxies. Part of the issue of that is we just really don't know because there's a lot we still can't see. I know one of the things that they believe you're probably realistically looking at 20 trillion galaxies. So we don't know. When you can figure each galaxy has 100 billion to 900 billion stars, you get somewhere around 2 to 20 sextillion, stars is basically what you're looking at. That's a number I can't relate to. Just to get you close, in 2013, our national debt was 13 trillion. We probably wish it was still there. Back then, if you stacked $5 bills one on top of the other, that would get you 220 miles or 20,000 miles. It would almost reach the moon. So what we're at now, it would reach the moon twice. And we can't fathom that with our mind. And that number is smaller than the stars. So, yeah, I thought this was interesting. It's been estimated that there are more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on earth, but there are more atoms in one grain of sand than there are stars in the universe. We serve a God that takes time for big things and little things. So, you can look here at this chart. You can see where trillion is with 12 zeros. You go down to sextillion, and that's 21 zeros. So that's the amount of, it's more than that, but that's the line we're on with the amount of stars we have. These are numbers we don't understand. Science is slowly waking up to the inconvenient truth the universe looks suspiciously like a fix. The issue concerns the very laws of nature themselves. For 40 years, physicists and cosmologists have been quietly collecting examples, all too convenient coincidences and special features in the underlying laws of the universe that seem necessary in order for life and hence conscious beings to exist. Change any one of them and the consequences would be lethal. And that's Fred Hoyle or Paul Davies. They see this stuff, but they keep talking about evolution. I don't understand it. Have you ever heard of Occam's razor? And basically it's the most logical, least far out explanation. It's the thing. And the example I got is, a tree falls down. So why did the tree fall down? Well, two examples. The wind knocked the tree down. The other example is two meteorites. One hit the tree and knocked it down. Then the other meteorite hit the other one and obliterated the evidence. Well, which one are you going to believe? And you get to looking, and the simplest thing whenever we look at the universe is something designed it. And it had to be something like God. So, this is from another doctor somewhere. Moreover, the materialism is absolute. We cannot allow a defined foot in the door. It's just really interesting. It's not that the methods and institutions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation. On the contrary, we are forced by their prior commitments and adherence to things to the material cost to produce material. No matter how counterintuitive it is, no matter how mystifying. They have to believe in something besides God. Revelation indicates that the existence of everything everywhere is due to the divine determination. Nothing in the universe precedes God. God is independent and is independent of God or exists apart from God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. That's John 1:3. There's not a star that beautifies the heavens which he did not make, and that's from Testimonies. I believe that Earth is the most privileged planet. The more you study nature and the more you study creation. But you know what? With all of this I've studied, that's not why I think we're privileged. Think of how many stars we talked about a while ago that they think there is. We don't know. And from some of the stuff that we've studied and read, we believe God probably made other worlds. There's probably a lot more out there. Why did he waste his time to come down here with us? We are less than a speck of dust in the universe. And we are a speck of dust on this planet. Anytime you feel worthless, remember the God who created all that came down here for you. To me, that's, when I study creation, it makes me feel like I'm worth something. Because the God that created all this stuff cares about me. So I think that's important for all of us to believe. I think studying about creation and learning who we are, where we come from, is very important. We didn't come from monkeys. You know, people want to believe they come from monkeys because they want to believe they're animals, and if they act like animals, then that's why. You know, they don't want to believe that they have a moral compass and a God that expects more out of them. We have a God that cares about us and wants to lead us and wants us to be his children. We're not subjects, just like we talked about in Sabbath school this morning, the prodigal son. God wants us to be his children, not servants. So whenever you study creation, I think that's what we need to take from it. It's wonderful to study. I love to study it. I could talk for hours about this. But it's because I know I've got a God and a Creator that loves me. Let's have a prayer real quick, and then we'll sing the closing song. Father, we thank you for the time that you've come down and spent with us, for the patience that you have that we cannot understand, and the love that you have always shown us. We thank you for never giving up on us, Father. We thank you for this wonderful creation that we see around us, that we know at this point in time, because of sin, is nothing like it looked like to begin with. We look forward, Father, to being able to go home and be with you and see the original love that you showed us with how you created things. We look forward to spending an eternity learning more about you. Father, bless us and be with us. In your name, amen. I don't remember what the original or what the number was for the closing song. Get my glasses on and I might could see it. 88.